Howdy, folks. Welcome back to Viva La Cats. I am your host, Justin Hiles, accompanied by my great friends, Steve Maurer and Joel Spencer. We are here to bring you the very best of the Bearcats every single week. You can find our show on the 1012 network. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to us. You can find us there as well as YouTube to watch. Gentlemen, we have a loaded show today. So we're going to have to get through a lot of different things. We got a few recaps. We got a few previews. We have some other things to catch up from the Big 12 because there's a lot of storylines happening. So we're going to get right into it. But before we get to that, quick shout out to our sponsors, Charlie Hustle. Thank you for always providing us some great merch. We will get to that later in the show. Here we go. It is about 8:49 God's time. Tuesday night. Don't fight me on this, Joel. Eastern time, Mountain time, I don't care. Central time is God's time. It is about 9 o'clock, God's time, Tuesday night. The Bearcats have just beat NKU, kept them on their side of the river as it properly should be. The River Rumble, apparently, as it's called. We're naming that quote-unquote rivalry now. Somehow found a way to cover. 16 points, Bearcats win 76-60. We're going to recap this. We're going to go into Nichols, and then we're going to go into football. Before that, let's get to this one. Gentlemen, how do you feel about this game? A little messy in the first half, kind of cleaned it up in the second half. What are the vibes?
I mean, the first text I sent you guys after the game ended was exhale. This was a really good road test, especially this early in the season, even without some of our best players. To be tested this early in an environment that wants you to lose. And everything in the game was pointed towards, momentum swinging the Norse's way. To have this type of test and this type of challenge this early in the season, I think will serve us wonders moving forward.
Yep. And that's what you wanted to see in the second half. Like they kind of just pulled away, made NKU, kind of back out and really expose them. They went for easy dunks. We went for easy lobs. They kind of took care of business and that end. And, these early road tests for the Bearcats have not really gone well. They've gone 2-1 in them before tonight. And there was an overtime game. There was a 1-point win at Miami, and obviously we lost to NKU in our previous trip to the Truist Arena, which, by the way, the Cincinnati Bearcats hold the best single-season record in.
That they do. Better
than NKU, a team that actually plays there every year. Anyway, and that's kind of what you want to see from a good team. Like they kept it close in the first half, got a little bit of those jitters out of the way, and then really poured it on the second half. Shout out to CMOS, dude. He's cooking right now. And just in my conspiracy theory, and Joel, I don't know if you remember this from last year, but I'll tell you now, if he had been able to play in the Crosstown shootout last year.
Stop.
Okay. All right. We'll move on. Sorry. But he's cooking right now. Wes was even like, I think if I got as good as he did tonight, I think I would be a good shooter even now, and the post-game radio comments, which was good. But something to note that Wes was a little bit upset about. He said he would let the guys celebrate before he got on them tomorrow about the offensive rebounding. We got beat in the offensive rebound 16-5 tonight. And, you got a road game against a Power 4 team coming up on Saturday, and you don't really want to see that again, So like I know Georgia Tech has not been the greatest team in the world to start the season, but still Power 4 competition, still on the road. And you passed your first road test of the season. Hopefully they get better before their second. But, you didn't want to keep it close. You wanted to really show their pace in the second half, and they did.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest things, too, when you look at that, when you look at the rebounds in this game, you're going to see this, I think, in a few more games before Dan Skillings comes back. But this team, especially on the offensive boards, looks completely different without him. And I think that's something that they have to figure out. Unfortunately, I think this game was a specific case where a lot of these just rebounds, honestly, were kind of dinky and they got away from us. And they got to weird parts of the court where NKU just happened to be sitting. But even then, like there was some lack of hustle in some of those plays, lots of sloppy turnovers throughout the entire game on both sides. But especially even with the ones for the Bearcats, just kind of like throwing it away. And really some unforced turnovers that just didn't make sense. I think the biggest thing from this game that you have to take away going forward, which is a good thing and a bad thing, is what you just mentioned about CMOS. CMOS shooting 6 for 9 in this game. Absolutely wonderful. Tweeted this out. Looks like a vintage Jaron Cumberland, especially on that NKU court in that arena. You know, I can't tell you how many times we saw Jaron nail some great threes in that arena. But with that said, if you take CMOS out of the equation, because we got Day back tonight, you have no Dan, but you take CMOS out of the equation, 5 made threes for the Bearcats on the night. And that is 5 and 16, 5 for 16 as a team. So of course you want to lean on somebody who's hot at the time, but you have to be able to figure out how to get more guys going, because some nights it is going to be tough, but with a roster this loaded, there's no excuse for having this many guys shoot that poorly and not be able to find a way to get it in, especially against a team like NKU. And I said this last week when we did our preview, and coming to this week, NKU is a much better team than they looked like on paper with their record. They did drop that game to Nichols, which is interesting. We'll kind of touch on that here in a second, talked about Nichols, but you know, going into this game 0-3, they were hungry, and this is a game that they do not want to let go. It's the same as anybody else who has a rival who feels like that little brother they want to get one over. They're going to try their damn best, but it took until CMOS hit pretty much back-to-back logo shots for this game to actually pull away. It felt like it took forever, and we're all wondering, is it going to happen? But thankfully it did at the right time, and NKU eventually just lost steam. Biggest thing from this game that I want to ask you guys about is, now that the Bearcats have started off 4-0, they have their first technically true road test. Of course, we're going to preview the game coming up against Georgia Tech this week, but how are you guys feeling about the roster as a whole with where it stands right now? Of course, like I said, you're missing Dan, but you did get Day back tonight. How do you feel about the roster going forward, throughout the rest of November and into December through non-conference?
Well, it's a very talented roster, and it's a very deep roster. You just touched on 3-point percentage, and coming into tonight, we were a top 10 team in the country. Granted, very small sample size this early in the season, but we were a top 10 team in 3-point field goal percentage. And right behind us was that school right up the road. And so there were lots of comments being made about, it's actually going to be a shootout this year. And, you really hope that tonight was just an off night. You go into, like we've mentioned, your first true road test against a team that's really hungry, hasn't won yet this year, really wants to get one over on, another local school, and they're going to give it their all. And they're going to play scrappy. They're going to fight for every ball. And we haven't faced that test yet. So I'm very encouraged coming out of this game, because regardless of, whether it was a Horizon League team or whether it was a Big Ten team, ACC, whoever it was, you come out of this game feeling encouraged. And you come out of this game feeling like, okay, now we know how to handle it. Now we know if it's in these close type of games, we now have the game plan of how to kind of hammer down and, run away with it in the end, which is what we did.
Boiler up and hammer down?
Yeah.
Real quick, Joel, I want to bring back a memory from when we were on the Barstool account back in the day, first year of Brandon's tenure, and the Barstool NKU account was tweeting the weirdest things at us. And I think one of the greatest things you did for me was you told me, just don't recognize them. Don't even mention that they exist. Like, they kept tweeting at us, and like we did not even interact with them. And I don't even think I tweeted for the whole game. I think I just tweeted like highlights and like Bearcats win at the end. And like, I think we won by 30 that game too. So yeah.
That had to have annoyed them, because they just wanted to trash talk. And it annoyed so many of our fans just this week that they were calling this a rivalry game and that they were hyping it up so much. They came up with a nickname for this so-called rivalry, and they beat us 2 years ago. But other than that, there isn't really a true history of back and forth there. So sure, hey, we don't have Keg and Ales, we don't have the River City rivalry. We'll take a River Rumble, but it's not something that I feel the need to continue every year.
Speaking of not continuing every year, Joel, can we talk about some of these broadcast issues from tonight's game?
Please.
Yeah, we're gonna present an in-depth analysis of what the hell is going on at not BB&T Truist Arena.
Yeah. All right. So
take it away, buddy.
So this is coming from your boy who studied broadcast journalism at the University of Cincinnati. And I actually did a lot of behind-the-scenes broadcast work when I was in school.
What do you mean? You were center court like that? You were like you were very much on the scenes too.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So I kind of have experience doing it all. I was in the broadcasting truck. I was courtside. I was directing. I would do different roles for different games. But I actually worked most of the Bearcat home games at NKU's arena that year that we were there. And long story short, most of these games are contracted by a third party. And so the one that I worked for was based out of Columbus, and they would always contact those that were freelance workers in the area to do camera ops, to do mic ops, to do, whatever job needed to be done. And most of these individuals are very tenured, like do every single event in the area, whether it's Xavier, whether it's UC, whether it's Bengals, Reds, you get in with this company, you get offered to do all these sorts of games. So a lot of these broadcasting issues that we were seeing tonight isn't necessarily an ESPN Plus issue or a FanDuel network or whatever. It's whoever this broadcasting team hired to do these jobs, which is freelance work. So it's very possible that it was students like me who, are doing these big roles on this nationwide broadcast. And we've experienced other broadcasts in the past. We have the Bowling Green broadcast that we always like to go back to. So really anyone, if you have the experience or you have a foot in the door, can do these types of jobs. But as the company, you always want to try and vet and make sure that you have someone vouch for you. I was very fortunate to be brought in by someone who's like a 30-year vet in the business and worked side by side with him. So I was never responsible, of course, for any of these issues that we saw. But yeah, you come back from commercial and you have 30 seconds of just black screen, no audio, or you have a 20-second reel of, a highlight from earlier in the game, or the Drew McDonald package that they were running, or, they had a camera just on Dan Horde for the longest time with no audio. And then after 30 seconds, they run the clip over again with the audio. So, yeah, just you really can't have those types of errors when you're on this type of broadcasting platform. And it's embarrassing to see, especially when all the work that goes into, what makes a broadcast come together.
Yes. And honestly, thank you for the in-depth kind of look at that. Because I think a lot of people that are watching these broadcasts really do have those questions of why does it end up like this? And why is it NKU? I said this to my fiance while we were watching. I don't understand why they do that and then also do so much promotion about their media arts programs and everything else at the same time while they're doing this broadcast, which is quite possibly the worst advertisement that you could possibly give for NKU's video and media department as a whole.
Even though it's not really them doing it.
Right.
Yeah. It's still
but it's the two just don't go together very well.
Well, but here's the thing. It's it's whoever wins the contract with ESPN, the overall broadcasting partner. So if, NKU's media production team or program won that contract for their home games on ESPN Plus, of course, anytime you have a bigger, a bigger network like, True CBS or Main ESPN, they fly people in for those games. They're not going to mess up those types of broadcasts because of the amount of eyes that are on it. ESPN Plus, they don't care. That's something that they can just throw anyone who knows how to type keys on a keyboard. And that's where you get a lot of those, oh shit, the screen's black. What do we do? And the amount, you're wearing headphones, even when you're on the court, you're listening to everything that's going on in the broadcast truck because the director's right in your ear. One of my jobs that I did was I controlled the game clock. So if we came back from commercial, I would hold the play on the court until we were actually on the court. And so you've got refs, you've got players, you've got fans looking at you, waiting for you to go. And you're just waiting for that director cue. But they're cursing at the camera ops across the truck from them. And it's chaotic. If you've seen like Kitchen Nightmares or oh God, what's the I am blanking
Master
on
Chef.
no, what's the God, this
Bar Rescue.
Bar Rescue, just any like, or Hell's Kitchen, any major like kitchen where they're just shouting at each other and the head chef is like, where's this, cue this up, like that's what it is in the truck. So it's not for the faint of heart. And as a little like 20-year-old college kid who's just getting into the network and into the industry, it's very intimidating if you don't know what you're getting yourself into. So those errors are very easy to come by, and it's embarrassing to see, but also at the same time, these might just be kids learning how to do it.
Speaking of people who are just learning how to do it and people that are very intimidated walking into a place that they are not familiar with, Nichols got to take a trip to the greater Cincinnati area and play NKU and the Bearcats. As we mentioned before, they did beat NKU. However, they definitely did not beat the Bearcats. They suffered an 86-49 defeat in Fifth Third Arena. Absolute blowout. Bearcats covered and some, which felt really good after the game before that. Overall, the main storylines from this game, like I said, we wanted to dig into it really quick. Not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. Bearcats overall looked pretty solid with Seamoss and Jizzle both dropping 19 points in that game. Seamoss was 5 for 7 from 3, which on top of tonight continues his just insane streak, which our friend Donnie Smokes actually pointed this out, which is incredible. The 6 for 9 shooting tonight in the NKU game actually dropped his 3-point percentage on the season, which is just asinine because this guy is shooting the lights out. Yeah. We hope he continues because right now he's probably the best 3-point shooter in the entire country, which we all thought there was a possibility of. He's doing it right now, which is great. And of course, Jizzle in this game looked really good too. Was able to spread the ball around pretty well. And things looked pretty fluid. Bearcats cracked open a lead really early and just kept that gap the entire time and kept widening it until eventually, clock hit zeros and this thing was on ice. But overall, a very good win for the Bearcats. And to mention this too, because we haven't really got a chance to talk about it, the Bearcats did jump up to 17 last week and then dropped this week in the AP poll to 18. And the best part about this is that Florida and Cincinnati are the only two teams in the AP top 25 that are undefeated that dropped in the rankings, which of course, unfortunately happened because Kentucky beat Duke, which therefore propelled them up higher in the rankings. Of course, your Bearcats, as always, get slighted there, unfortunately. But if everything rolls their way, they're going to keep moving. And of course, this is where we get to this point. Unfortunately, this point in the show, Georgia Tech, we have them this Saturday, November 23rd, the Bearcats on the road, heading down to Georgia, playing a team that honestly has just kind of had a so-so start. They had a close enough game, 7-point loss to Georgia, had wins over Texas Southern, and I'm not even sure what WGA is, and lost to North Florida in an absolute barn burner, 105-93. This team is exactly what they were last year to start, where they look really bad and they might actually be really good at the same time. We don't know, but they're probably not as good as they were last year. How are we feeling?
So Bearcats are a 4.8 point favorite on Mr. Bart Torvik's site. He has it at 77-72, which UC Math tells me that is a 149 point total. So, and just looking at Pomeroy as well, Georgia Tech is 105 on there. Cincinnati jumps up to number 11 after tonight's win.
Hello.
This is another road test, Justin, like we were talking about, where you want to get these things cleaned up before Saturday. And, I don't know what this is going to look like for Georgia Tech on Saturday. I don't know if the building's going to be full. I don't know. Like, I got to look and see if their football team's playing at home on Saturday. Cause honestly, like people might be more interested in that the way that their football team's been playing. So, like I'm very interested to see what goes on. I do feel good that the Bearcats can win, but I just want to see it happen. We saw one good game this tonight against NKU, and I think we need to see them do it against another power conference team.
Georgia Tech football hosts NC State this Thursday night.
Oh,
so
okay.
Maction. Look, this early in the season, you of course want to be encouraged at every step of the way. You crush the teams you're supposed to crush. You win the games that are going to be tough, and you find a way to win. We found a way tonight against NKU, and I think if we can find a way to win at Georgia Tech, there's not too many more tests in our non-conference schedule. Of course, you've got the shootout. Of course, we're going to Villanova, who's not the same Villanova they used to be.
Oh, God, no.
But still another Power 5 in basketball. So, we're trending in the right direction. We're moving up in all the rankings except for the AP. But this early in the season, not much movement ever happens there until teams really start to put losses together.
Yep. And one thing I want to mention here too, which I think this is going to be this game, especially after what we just had tonight against NKU, of course, with that 16-point win, looked a lot closer for a long time. Bearcats, as it currently stand, have a 39-point positive differential against their opponents thus far this season, outscoring them 92-53 on average. Of course, that UAPB game kind of inflated that a bit, and we're only 4 games in. But I would be really curious to see how that number shifts, and also if they can kind of keep up with some of these blowout games. I don't think Georgia Tech is going to be the game that we do that. However, I'd be hoping for a double-digit win on the road just to kind of prove that, what has happened thus far and some of the bigger wins aren't a fluke. And also, like we've just said with NKU, that you can go into a tough environment and those games that might be close, you find a way to pull away. This is the same problem we had last year all season long, even against some of the lesser opponents, like even Howard. Early in the season, we were able to score, but we weren't able to necessarily keep that team staved off. And I think the defense is being a really pivotal part of this team being transformative in taking that extra step in shutting teams down and being able to make some of those conversions, ending up to some bigger wins, which is definitely what you need at this point in the season. Taking care of those games. Speaking of not taking care of games, bowl eligibility looking scary, guys. We're in scary hours at this point in the season. The worst case scenario is just getting closer and closer to fruition. The Bearcats, as it currently sits, 5 wins, still looking for the infamous number 6. You're at 5-5. You have a road trip to Manhattan this week. The Iowa State game we'll unpack here in a second, but as far as bowl hopes goes, do you think that this is actualizable, or do you think that we're going to come up short?
I think it's doable. Of course, you hope you can steal a game in the Big Apple, in the Windy City, but you just don't know at this point because you've lost 3 in a row. You're on a losing streak. Morale's got to be in the shitter. So, as much as you want to say, yeah, the team can band together and can, play spoiler to Kansas State's season, they might not be able to. And then you look at your last chance home against TCU, who's not a pushover team either. This is dire straits. And I know that we are, I forget exactly what the ranking index was, but if not enough teams get to 6 wins to qualify for bowl eligibility, we are currently second in terms of the 5-win teams that would qualify. However, that doesn't feel great as a nice little consolation prize. I mean, even being at 6-6 after starting the year 5-2 isn't really a great consolation prize, but you got to win the games you're supposed to, and we just haven't been.
Yeah. I mean, I would push back, Joel, on 6-6 not being like where we thought we would be, because I did say, like, before the season, that it would be a tough road to 6 wins, and that's why you wanted to get it done by Boulder, because I did think that this month of November would be tough. Now I think our schedule has changed a little bit, and West Virginia was really the game that everything changed for us. But I think the vibes just went out the window during and after the West Virginia game, and they I think I was a little bit down on the team. I was tweeting on Saturday night, and I I did the Scott Satterfield set the program back tweet again. So that's how I was feeling. But I mean, I don't know if I'm wrong, but it would be just demoralizing, like you said, Joel, for us to start 5-2 and finish 5-7. Like, I just don't really see a point where this would make anybody feel good. I think people were starting to feel a little bit better at 5-2. I don't know if you would have beat Colorado, really. Like, they're showing they're very talented. They're showing they're good. That was going to be a hard game to win always. I don't know if you were going to beat Iowa State or Kansas State before the season. Before the season, Justin, I chalked those up as losses. So, maybe I shouldn't have gotten as mad about losing that game. But it was just the way that we played, man. Like, we had Iowa State in multiple 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s, and they picked up like every one. And then they run a fake punt on us. That our quarterback has more rushing yards than passing yards. It kind of just got out of hand in the second half.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joel.
I was just going to push back on Steve's pushback real quick and say that you're absolutely correct that before the season, I think bowl eligibility was how we determined a successful season. But after starting 5-2 with one of the losses being, or with our 2 losses being Pitt and Texas Tech, how both those ended, I think we were all kind of leaning more towards 7-8 wins on the season based on how we were trending. So that's why I said at this point, the season's a disappointment. I don't think you're wrong at all in saying that before the season. Well,
no, but you're right, Joel. Like, it should change. Our expectations should change. You start 5-2. You have the whole season in front of you. You have games against 3, winnable teams left after that, and to go 5-7 would obviously be a major disappointment, and to go 6-6 would be another disappointment. Like, I think making a bowl is like the goal at this point, but you're right, Justin. It just does not look like crazy likely. And the funny thing is, like, we had almost 300 yards of rushing in this game. It wasn't like this offense was like not great, and I don't think the defense really played that poorly either. Other than obviously those not being able to get off the field on 3rd down, 3rd and long, and it was just unfortunate. Like, the defense held them pretty close for most of the game until Iowa State kind of broke them in the 4th quarter with those 2 late touchdowns. So I don't really hate what this game was. I think it just got it's all the problems of the second half just made me wonder, okay, we got false starts, we got delay of games, we're giving up 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9, then 3rd and 7 conversions, we're giving up fake, everything was just rolling downhill in the opposite way, and it just did not look good. And then Satterfield after the game's like, oh man, they were clapping their own hands, and they got us to false start. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, but it's game 10, my dude. Are we really blaming the other team on false starts in game 10?
Yeah. It was another game where if you just look at the scoreboard at the end and you just look at the box score, it looks much worse than it was. It was another game where we hung in there for the longest time and just could not get the stops when we needed to.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and the biggest thing I look at this point in the season, Joel, I think you made a great point about having to meet your expectations and how they should change throughout the season. If you start 5-2, you can't let the season just snowball in the negative direction and roll back right over top of you. This season was ours to take. We knew even at that 5-2 that those 2 losses were unfortunately by part of our own hands, kind of fluky. And so when you're looking at this team being a more like a 7-win team, now that you are on this streak of 3 straight losses, it really does feel demoralizing, especially after how you started off. One thing I think is interesting too, just a little tidbit, this whole season, but when the season started, I believe we had 3 ranked games on the schedule, every single team before we go into that game has played their way out of the top 25 before we got to them, which also in those types of seasons when these games will matter, those absolutely will be crushing. But thankfully for the Bearcats, we've done it to ourselves, so we don't even have to worry about that conversation in the way that some other Big 12 teams might when it comes to strength of schedule and trying to get that extra spot in the playoff, which, that's getting interesting. Guys, let's just go ahead real quick and give a quick preview for this Kansas State game. I think we've touched on a few points. Of course, the Bearcats are going into Manhattan. They are an 8.5-point dog on the road there in Manhattan. So far throughout the season, Avery Johnson has looked, pretty decent, but unfortunately, for Kansas State's sake, after a really, really strong start at 6-1, they are now 7-3, dropping the last two games to Houston and Arizona State, not being able to muster 20 points in either of those games and also letting up 24 in both of those. Just kind of some rock fights, as you would expect from a Kansas State team. But in the same vein there, the Bearcats are kind of suffering the same fate where their opponents are beating them by about the same margin, 34, 31, 34, and ending up at 23, 24, and 17. So you have two teams that are just kind of stuck in a weird rut right now where it's a lot of the same each week, trying to find their way over the hump. I think, of course, you're always going to try to give the advantage here to the team that's at home, but both of these teams right now kind of on a slide, and it's one of those games that you look to as you got a 3-4 team in conference, a 4-3 team in conference with K-State. There's a chance. There's a chance, and it's the same thing we said about Iowa State this past week that we have to carry over to this week is, can they just make good on some of these big plays? Can they make good on some of these important drives in order to win the game? And can they stay disciplined? And I think as that happened in Iowa State and Ames, when that game unravels, it unravels fast. And so we're going to go do our very specific picks here in just a minute. But before we get to that, do you guys have any points on this K-State game before we go away?
Yeah, real quick. I just wanted to talk about a couple quick things about what we think about this before we get into our picks. I mentioned, I think unfortunately the West Virginia game was kind of the downer for us, and I think unfortunately a lot of our fan base has checked out on football and is moving on to basketball season, which worries me a little bit. Another November where we moved on already, and I think it's fair to say people are down on Satterfield again, after starting 5-2. I'd say one key for UC to win is that they have to throw the ball effectively to pace their running offense. Obviously Sorsby only had 66 passing yards this past Saturday. And he had 141 rushing yards, but that's really not going to get it done for you. You had 287 rushing yards total. Kiner had 120 as well. So but you have to, maybe that doesn't make sense for me to say they need to throw for more yards, but this passing offense needs to be more effective. It has not really been as effective in a few weeks now, really maybe since even October. So we needed to get back there. Unfortunately, I think if the defense allows more long passes and conversions on third and 7s, 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s, it's going to be a long night. And I also think special teams has been brutal lately. Poor punts, poor kick coverage. We've had missed field goals this season as well. So, it's been rough the past couple of weeks. I mean, I hate to say it, but unfortunately, I don't really think the punt team is, and the punts have not been as good. Satterfield got asked about Fletcher's job security over the weekend, and it's just not been ideal on the special teams. You have one of the worst units in the Power Five. I was in my feels on Saturday night. I did have you been hurt by this man coaching special teams? If so, you may be entitled to compensation. So that's kind of just how it's gone,
Yep.
For us people that like football and basketball.
Hey, it was clear. It was clear last year. It's clear again this year. That's all we have to say.
And the DBs too.
Very evident.
Sorry, West Side Jesus.
I mean, Kansas State and Cincinnati are both two teams that have just sputtered offensively after starting the season so hot. So it's going to be who's going to get their fire back. It's what is it? An immovable force? No. An unstoppable force meets an immovable object, except it's bad offense meets bad offense.
A stoppable force meets a movable object. How about that?
Bam. Perfect. Thank you. Delete what I said and just put Steve's clip in.
Perfect. Gentlemen, it's time. It's time. I'm going to take it this week. We have a very special little piece to show you. It's been around for a while, but it's just beautiful. This is something that our friends at Charlie Hustle do super well. Steve has on a beautiful piece of merch from our friends over there. Check that out. The Final Four Bearcat shirt. You can still get that on the website. Head over to www.charliehustle.com and find that shirt. Put it in your cart. Get you some. But with that said, I got a few here on the board. We have the Bearcats baseball tee to my left. We have the Kansas State bomber jacket, varsity jacket in lavender to my right, which is just absolutely gorgeous. I'm still waiting for him to make a Bearcats one because it will be purchased immediately. Overall, I think both of these options are great for this week because the Bearcats, of course, on the road wearing white, most likely, maybe black, but a good seasonal option that will carry over great into baseball season once that starts up. And then, of course, for K-State, guys, lavender. Got to get on that. Got to get on that. Like I said, still waiting to get the Bearcats bomber jacket. We'll see if maybe one of those comes up at some point. But like I said, two great picks. There's plenty more to get from the website. So head over to www.charliehustle.com. Use the promo code 101215. That is 101215 for 15% off of all non-sale items. That is good as long as we give you this ad. And it's good for some good deals. Get on over there. A lot of the Bearcat stuff is marked down right now. You can get it for about 20, 25 bucks, which is a steal because these are some quality shirts made really well, feel great, very versatile, and, throw it on for whatever you need. Great weekend shirts. But like I said, use that promo code 101215 for 15% off your first purchase. Gentlemen, it's time. It's time. Show me those finas. Show me those finas. Bring me that money. We have another week of Viva La Cash. Gentlemen, here's what we've got. K-State, as it currently sits, is an 8.5-point favorite at home in Manhattan. It makes sense. You would expect it. They've been good all year. The game total for this, like last week, was 53.5. This week is 53. And the money line, of course, I picked between the two teams. We also have some basketball lines, which Steve will give us. But before we do that, we're going to go across the board, left to right. You're going to say your spread, who's covering. We're going to say game total, over, under, and money line. Joel, hit me. Just give me all three in a row.
For Bearcats? Oh, boy. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over again and expecting different results. Look, Kansas State is favored by 8.5. I gotta bet the Bearcats because it is stoppable force meets movable object. It's two offenses that have been stuttering. So I think that we hang in there, and we've shown that we can score. Hopefully this team backs against the wall. They decide to step it up. So I think that Bearcats cover. It's no fun to bet the under, but I do think under 52.5. And screw it. Just take Bearcats money line.
All right. Well, last week, for the first time the entire season, I faded the Bearcats and it paid off. Unfortunately, not happy about that. However, this week, I think it's going to be more of the same. Guys, I'm not confident in this team. I've kind of lost my hope at this point. I don't think I'm going to get that back against TCU either. I legitimately think we're going to finish 5-7. I'm going to be pissed.
I don't think that's a wrong call.
And I don't think anybody would blame me, and I wouldn't blame anybody else who follows the same line. So this week I am going to take the Bearcats to cover, but unfortunately taking another loss. So That'll be K-State in that win, and I'm going to take the under. These two teams have just been bad teams. It's going to be a
What's
rock
the weather
fight.
look like for
Bearcats are gonna
Saturday?
lose. It's going to suck. It's just going to suck. It's another week of sucky Bearcats football. Steve?
What's the weather look like for Saturday? That's what I want to know.
The weather looks like 48 degrees and cloudy.
Okay. So in K-State's last home game of the season last year, it snowed like crazy. So that's that was my only hope for maybe like this sorry. This becomes like just a crazy game and UC can run the ball all over him and we already not really able to pass. So but unfortunately, Justin, I think I have to side with you. I will go with K-State. I will go with K-State minus 8.5, and I'm going to ride with you all and go with the under. I hate doing this. I feel sad.
We all bet the under. Wow.
I feel sad.
And I'm the only hopelessly optimistic one about our Bearcats.
Yeah.
Hey,
I mean,
everybody needs an optimist.
I want to believe, but I don't know. We'll see. Should we do some basketball lines?
We should do some basketball lines. Perhaps there'll be more optimism.
How about that? That's probably much better. Okay.
Hit us.
Cincinnati on Bart Torvik is favored by 4.8. So we're going to round up and make it 5 points against the Ramblin' Wreck and Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets in Atlanta. Over under of 149. Let's make it 148.5 just for fun. Joel, let's start with you again. What do you think is going to happen on Saturday?
I would probably go under the total. I think it'll feel a lot like NKU where we won't pull away until very late. But I feel confident that we cover that.
I like that.
Here's the thing. We're going on the road, and if anything similar to NKU, I would expect Georgia Tech would be a somewhat more palpable opponent with some amount of moxie. And based on the way our defense played and the way the rebounding game went, if it's anything like that, there's probably going to be some points scored. I still think the Bearcats would end up taking that, but at the same time, 149 is really high. 148.5 is really high. That's probably the highest total this entire season for us thus far. Screw it, over. Arm burner.
I think I'm going to go with the over as well. I'm going to go with Cats money line, and I also think I would buy this up to like 9.5 points. I do think that you like if we get rolling again in the second half and CMOS gets hot again, and it starts just rolling downhill. This could be one of those games where really like Cincinnati starts just running away with it, depending on what type of crowd is there on Saturday. There's a couple different factors, but Cincinnati and those black Jordan uniforms going down to Atlanta, like, I don't know, something about it just like makes me happy. I think I will be happy. I think I will be much happier watching that game than I will be watching the football game later that night.
I think all of us would feel the same way. Steve, let's just look at it this way too. That's like 85, 65. That could be like an 85, maybe 70. That's your over right there. So
yeah.
I think it's fairly safe. However, you never know. Georgia Tech could be really bad. It could be like last year. We could blow them out and Georgia Tech could suffice nothing. So
the hype train would be like completely off the rails at that point. And we'd only be in like the 15s or whatever, but I would be insatiable.
Very, very possible.
Good vocab word.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, with that said, we don't know where the Bearcats could end up this season. And I actually had an interesting little sheet that I put together. There was a ton of things that I put on this sheet. It is a 150-point total prop bet sheet for the season that 3 of us have participated in. We will give all of that information out later. Way too much to go into in even an episode. Ridiculous. But we're going to talk about 2 specific points, and we're going to make them quick. Gentlemen, who is going to have, as our first prop bet here that we're going to talk about, who will have, for the Bearcats, the highest average points per game on the entire season? This is including postseason, full thing said and done. Joel, go first.
I've got to go CMOS. I think he's going to be your stone cold killer. He is definitely going to serve the Klay Thompson role, where anytime you need a 3, just Give the ball to the Lithuanian.
Absolutely.
That's
Clay
right.
Thompson from Lithuania, as we all know. I am also going to agree with CMOS. Steve, what you got?
CMOS, by the way, leading the team with 17.7 points per game, leading the team with 5.3 assists per game, leading the team with 75% field goal percentage. And like our man Don said, his average dropped with with that tonight. It's already off to a rough start for me, but I kind of wonder if Dylan Mitchell is just going to turn it on in the second half and just become a monster. He's a little bit like, younger, like, and he hasn't been able to like really get the 3-point bomb working yet, but I feel like we're going to need him to go off in a couple of these games when, the teams start either doubling or put their best defender on CMOS and, there's a weaker defender, or, Dylan just knows what these bodies are like in the Big 12 and is able to work around them. So I picked Dylan just to kind of be a contrarian, but, just looking at the stats, CMOS is already off to a good start.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to do this after we got my goal is to get through the first 3 games, because then we have some amount of an idea of what this team could be. So now that we have that, easier to make some amount of a judgment instead of doing it blindly with so many transfers. Here's another one. Will the Bearcats have 2+ players make the Big 12 first and second teams? That would be one on each. One on both?
I said yes, strictly because you threw in second team. I think the Big 12 is it's arguably the best conference in college basketball. So if you just left it at first team, I don't know about that, but second team, absolutely. There's loads of potential there.
Yep, I would agree. I think it just makes sense. It makes sense. If this team's going to be what they're supposed to be, it makes sense.
I agree.
Steve's going to agree. All right. And we'll leave that one for last. Real quick. This is the question that we talked about and we're very curious of. Will the Bearcats ever fall out of the top 25 this season? They currently sit right in the middle there. They're in the mix. If they win and do their job, they should stay in. But little streak, bad streak, good streak, what's going to happen? We don't know. Joel, how you feeling?
I said no. I don't think they drop out of the top 25. I think that this is a team that has every potential to make it through the non-conference schedule undefeated, dare I say. And I think that by that point, if you do that, you're in the top 10. And then that leads into how many wins can you string together before your losses start to pile up in conference play. So I think if we go into conference play, even with one loss, I don't think we drop out of the top 25. And then the Big 12 is just so deep, and I think we'll be competitive in that, top 3 or 4 teams in the Big 12 that I can't see us personally falling out of top 25.
Steve.
Yeah, so I unfortunately said yes, just because, and Joel, I sound like a Bearcats hater on this podcast, and I'm sorry, but I'm only saying that just because, first 4 games of the Big 12 slate at Kansas State, home for Arizona. Arizona lost a game against Wisconsin in Wisconsin. We'll see what they look like. They are currently 1 spot ahead of the Bearcats right now at number 17. And then you go to Baylor on a Tuesday night, and then you host Kansas on on that next Saturday. Both of those are noon games, by the way, which are, is this? I'm sorry, no, those are like 2:00 games, both of them. But both of them are on ESPN Plus, which, but no, the Arizona game is on ESPN too, but the Kansas game is on ESPN Plus. Can we not play any game on regular ESPN this year? Like, even the shootout is on ESPN Plus. Like, for whatever reason, we get no love from ESPN for this season. But
I pay year round for ESPN Plus. I was thinking I was going to use it for basketball or for football. Not a single game have I touched. So at least my money's going somewhere.
Oh, okay. Justin admitting to something. Anyway, I just think there's just going to be a stretch there where they lose like 2 or 3 games, and like if they're in the 20s, then some team just surges up for that week and like knocks them out. But I think it would only be like a 1 or 2 week stretch, maybe. I think they're good enough to definitely stay in the top 25 the whole time, but It's just this league is a gauntlet, and I don't know if we're one of the top 4 teams in the league, which is obviously like the best league in the country, So that's even though we're very good, it's like the Big East all over again back in like 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. Like it's very good and very deep.
Very fair. I'm going to have to agree with Steve on this one. I think at some point in the season, it's the Big 12, and there's some really good teams in here. And if the Bearcats are good and don't drop out, then freaking great. But odds are highly likely that they have at least a 2-game loss streak at some point in the season. It's bound to happen, happens to even the best of teams. And depending on where we're at, you don't have a lot of convincing wins, or you put one together, lose one. If you have enough back and forth, I think it could happen. But like Steve said, I think if it happens, it's going to be a 1-week thing. But I think they maybe get knocked out, or they sit on that fringe, 26, 27. They're not quite in the top 25, but we'll see how that nets out. Here's the last one, and then we'll move on so we can finish this thing out under an hour. Gentlemen, without going into any explanation, flat, give me your final record prediction on the season for regular season, not postseason, regular season. Joel, go first.
26 and 5.
26 and 5. Okay. I'm going to go 24 and 7. Steve.
I agree with Joel. I'm going 26 and 5.
Very nice. Very nice.
Oh, I'm sorry. Right. I said 25 and 6. My bad.
Okay. So we got 26 and 25, 24 and 7, and 25 and 6.
And I have, by the way, folks, I have a 10 and 1 record in non-conference. So just think about what game I'm talking about there.
Same. Unfortunately, same. I'm hoping that if that happens, it just happens to somebody else, and I'll be angry about it. But
they're in my head. I don't know what to tell you. They're in my head. I'm not even going to say their name, but they're in my head.
Hey, don't say it, and it can't happen. There we go.
Hey, that's where you keep the hopeless optimist around.
You keep the hopeless optimist around. And speaking of hopeless optimists, Joel and I will be attending the Crosstown Shootout this year in person. And actually, as a good tidbit for all of you who are listening, the last time that I attended a shootout in person, we won.
I cannot say the same.
Good.
Same with me. That was the last time I attended a shootout. We won.
I went to a Cintas shootout.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went to one of those
3 years ago.
Oh, shit. Wait, no, I did one too. However, the last time I attended a shootout in Fifth Third, this is true. Last time I attended a shootout in Fifth Third, we won. We need my presence back in order to win.
I hate that we have to do
the last
qualifiers.
2 shootouts in Fifth Third.
Oh yeah, me too.
4-1. So
me too.
I think I'm the good luck charm. I'll bring it back. We'll be fine. We'll see how it goes. Otherwise, you're just going to see me and Joel miserable after that game. But hopefully that's not the case. Gentlemen, we have talked so much about all that. We're going to very quickly do our Big 12 head-to-head and get on out of here with our Bearcat Sports wrap-up. Here's what we have got. The Charlie Hustler of the Week. Give it to me. Steve, give it to me. Who is it?
It's got to be Travis Hunter, man. This dude is insane. He's all over the ball. I think I saw he had 120 plus snaps on Saturday. 5 catches for 55 yards, 5 carries with a rushing touchdown, 1 interception, 3 tackles, and man was just all over the field on Saturday. But I do want to give an honorable mention to BYU Cougar Taysom Hill. Becomes the first player in NFL history to return a kick, throw an interception, score a rushing touchdown, pick up a fumble. There were so many things, and he did all of it in the same game. So shout out to him, man. They shouldn't even make him be a tight end. They should just give him the title football player. Just give him the Ohtani treatment.
New nickname for Taysom Hill. Just call him the walking scoregami.
I like that.
There
I like
you go.
that. Call him the super soaker because he's all over the place.
Oh, God. Speaking of soaking, gentlemen, unfortunately, the end has come to the miraculous run for the Cougars. You felt that it was bound to happen at some point. Unfortunately, it had to be to Lance Leipold's Kansas Jayhawks. Of all teams that this could have happened to, it sucks that it had to be them.
on the flukiest of fluke plays too.
Yeah, very, very close finish. It was absolutely there for BYU to win, but unfortunately just couldn't happen. This is one of those things that for BYU, as much as I love them, as much as I've supported them all year and will continue to do, because I think that this team is so much fun to watch, they've gotten away with a few games in these tight situations. To their credit, they have done it themselves. However, they've slipped by, and not every team gets to slip by every single week. And unfortunately, this drops them to the 9-1 and down to the 12th spot in the college football playoff this week, with Boise State, the first G5 to rank in the top 4 of the playoffs since your Cincinnati Bearcats were last there.
Has Boise State thanked UCF at all?
They probably haven't, and they should, because otherwise they're not going to make it.
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
They have
that's
to
a
pay
good
their
tweet.
homage. Otherwise, it's going to be a bloodbath.
Damn.
Against
that's a good
UNLV,
tweet.
most
Dang.
likely.
I should have thought about that.
Should have.
That's
done
good,
that.
Joel. Good job.
Steve, real quick, tell us who our bozo of the week, and Joel's going to finish it out with the most watchable game of the week.
Neil Brown, brother. I heard you on the broadcast say that you were a game. You just had to win out to get to the Big 12 championship game. And what do? You lose your 3rd straight home game this weekend, falling to those Baylor Bears at home. You lose by 2 touchdowns after your fans always say you're going to win the game by 2 touchdowns every time. My brother in Christ, what are you doing? You are 5-5. You've got 2 more games. Let's see what those games are. You got 2 more games. Hosting UCF, they should win that one, and then at Texas Tech, we'll see. But fellas, I think those billboards are going to stay up for another year. I don't think they're going to fire him just because they just like doing this themselves in West Virginia. And they just fired another coach the 2 straight years. Two basketball coaches had to be let go. So I don't know how much money they got. Let's just say that.
Maybe if they turn in more cans, they'll be able to get more funds to pay for the buyouts.
Just trying to recycle, folks.
Just trying to recycle. Come on. Joel, most watchable game of the week.
It pains me to say it, but Colorado's on a run right now. Colorado defeated Utah, the perennial conference favorite, 49-24. I mean, they gave up a field goal to start the game and then never looked back. Look, Travis Hunter, hashtag not my Heisman, but damn, Colorado's a good team.
That they are. And here's what we're going to do real quick before we move on to our Bearcat Sports wrap up. We're just going to list these off really fast. We're going to give you some exciting games because there's a few of them. And this actually is a pretty loaded slate for this week. Friday night, San Jose State and UNLV play. Could be a very interesting game for the Mountain West there. Saturday, Indiana and Ohio State play. The matchup we've been waiting all season long for as Indiana continues their miraculous run. Will they get stuffed by Ohio State, or will they finally stick it to them? We'll see what happens. Does Rourke have it in them? BYU in the desert going to Arizona State. This is pretty much the 1-2 team. I guess Colorado is actually the 2-1 team. I don't really know how the tiebreaker works there.
1-3.
1-3 team. Very close matchup here, and will make some waves in the finals.
Colorado also a big game this weekend against Kansas at Arrowhead. Kansas trying to get to a bowl. They got to keep winning. So we'll see.
We'll see. It could be interesting. And then, of course, another game, which these 2 teams in this venue, it just has to be that way. Army and Notre Dame in Yankee Stadium. Like, who could write it up any better? Just a hollowed ground of football, as everyone.
Literally, the 4 horsemen of Notre Dame was about a game against Army at old Yankee Stadium. Like, this is like literally the stuff that they used to write stories about.
Yeah.
What's going to win, the church or the state?
The church or the state. Separation will win. Separation will win.
Gentlemen, seems like they've been coming together recently. Anyway.
Moving on to our final topic of the week, we have the Bearcat Sports wrap-up given by our good, lovely, beautiful friend, Joel. You have a final point?
One quick note before we get to the sports wrap-up. You mentioned Arrowhead Stadium. Did you guys see in the news that the Nebraska neutral site game that was supposed to be at in
Indy.
Indianapolis, in Lucas Oil, is potentially being looked at to move to Arrowhead.
Well, perhaps, perhaps another Cincinnati team will just suffer more ref conglomerate.
I think this is technically a UC home game as well. So the fact that it keeps moving further and further away, and I get it, they want it to be like a big neutral site game, but Lucas Oil Stadium is big enough and is great at hosting big events. Why go all the way to Arrowhead? I don't see what the benefit is for the Bearcats.
Unfortunately, I think I know why, but
we all know why.
I think we're trying to get Nebraska fans there to make more money out of this game, which is sad to me because like I just didn't want the game to be moved off campus in general. Like I wanted it to be a home game. And dude, do you imagine what our 2020 Bearcats would have done to those 2020 Cornhuskers, dude? We would have spanked that ass, dude.
Yep.
So I'm just sad that series, that game never happened, and then this game in Nippert will never happen. And we'll just have to see fake Mahomes play at the real Mahomes Stadium.
That is very true. R.I.P. Scott Frost, by the way, for those 2020 Huskers. Steve, Bearcat Sports Wrap Up. Hit it, and let's get out of here.
Great segue to the Bearcat Sports Wrap Up, Joel, with some Bearcat Sports business that we did not talk about. So shout out to you. Thank you. Joel, do you want to take the Bearcat Sports Wrap Up?
No, go right ahead, Steve.
Okay, all right. I just want to. No.
Absolutely not.
I was not trying to be snarky. I just wanted to give him an opportunity.
No, I wasted 10 minutes earlier talking about broadcasting things that most of our listeners won't worry about. So go ahead with the sports wrap up.
All righty, 3, 2, 1. Women's basketball. Cincinnati unfortunately dropped a game last night, this Monday night, this week, to Seton Hall by 1 point. Late, unfortunate fourth quarter. Comeback for the Pirates down Cincinnati. They did beat Davidson earlier last week, so they are now 3-1 on the season. Jillian Hayes is still balling. They will play Georgetown on Friday and Florida Gulf Coast on Sunday as part of the Atlantic Slam W tournament. So definitely put them on your TV this weekend.
Shout out to women's basketball, highest rated recruiting class in program history.
Yes, Joel. Like Katrina Merriweather, man, she is doing it. So this team is coming, man. They're going to be good soon. So keep watching them. Watch this program build. And Jillian Hayes, shout out to her. She's a god.
Shout out Loveland. Shout out Loveland.
Yes, that's right. Women's volleyball. Cincinnati dropped both games at home to Arizona and Arizona State last week and will visit BYU and Utah this Thursday and Sunday. Reminder, folks, the Utah game is on the Sunday because BYU does not allow their students to play anything on Sundays. So just so you know, just a little reminder for you. That's why the Bearcats baseball team had to play a Thursday to Saturday series in Provo last year. So fun fact for you. Swimming and diving, they will meet with Ohio State this weekend in Columbus. So let's, a nice little swimming and diving win. Justin, did you know that Ohio State decided to pool scholarships for future swimming and diving teams? They're basically going to make it a club team. So this is kind of like the last year that Cincinnati will be playing these guys as a full varsity sport. I mean, they're going to be varsity. They're going to be D1, but they're just not going to get scholarships anymore. They're just kind of going to be
swimming and diving pooled scholarships.
See. Got him. I don't even know if that's the right sport, but Ohio State, man, that's crazy. Pay your athletes. Anyway, so they will go up. They will swim on up I-71 this week. Hopefully they will take down and they will drown the Buckeyes. Go Bearcats. And finally, hockey. The Cincinnati Bearcats split a road trip with Kentucky this past weekend. And I believe they're going to play Lindenwood this upcoming weekend in Missouri. And that has been your Bearcat Sports Wrap Up. Shout out to the boys, just real quick, just to make sure I'm not off my rocker. They are going to be playing, Purdue Northwest University this weekend. Okay. So shout out to them. And then they take a month off and they will come back in the end of January. So let's start following the hockey team again. They're going to be D1 next year.
Yes, they will be.
It'll be perfect. That's what we've been waiting for this whole time. Maybe, just maybe, we can find them another more local court rink to play on. Gentlemen, we're about to finish the IPF, do you think they would let them put some ice in there?
Winter
There's
Classic.
probably a way to view it. There's probably some kind of form of a stand.
No, Justin, here's what we do. We just make the Nippert into a hockey rink for the entire winter after that.
Stadium it's just a consistent stadium series.
Yes, exactly.
Never stops.
Stop
Bearcat.
We just get the rink from Ohio State when they play the Blue Jackets game earlier this year, and we just keep it.
Yeah.
I am going to that game.
Ohio
you
State
are? Oh, dude, that's going to be sick.
Go Red Wings.
Go Red Wings, baby.
Speaking of nonstop Bearcats action, we have nonstop Bearcats coverage every single week. Keep coming back each and every week to your wonderful trio here of 3 beautiful faces. Guys, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure every single week. Happy to talk to you guys. Get to shoot the shit about some Bearcats. We, of course, are part of the 1012 Network. That is the 1012 Network, bringing you the best coverage of all things Big 12. Head on over to the Twitter X app, whatever you use, whatever you call it, and make sure to give them a follow. You can catch all of the best action there. And as well, thank you to our sponsors, Charlie Hustle, for some absolutely brilliant merch. Keep giving it to us because we love that Bearcat stuff. We love that Bearcats gear. Give us more.
Should we join Blue Sky?
No.
Okay. Fair enough.
I understand the take. I understand the reasoning. No. It's just one more social media app, and I'm tired of them all. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me this week. Love you, boys. Take it easy. Go Bearcats. In order, as it should be.
Viva. Cats.